just here a week or so ago, I guess it was maybe last week, we had two of the NFL teams played their game in London. And for the last years, going way, way back, in fact, all the way back to a story I'm going to tell you tonight of one of the years I played, my first year actually in the NFL. Those games have been played overseas. Two teams are chosen, and they play each other overseas. I played in the first of those games the first professional football game played outside of the United States. It was supposed to be Dallas against Philadelphia. The year before, something happened and it didn't take place. And so we were up next to play Philadelphia, and we played in Mexico City in the Olympic Stadium. And you can imagine the kind of the nightmare of security with all of that. And it was really wild just kind of being a part of the whole thing. The league was much different then than it is now. To give you an idea, ESPN did not exist, okay? So it was very different, actually. But so there wasn't all of the media hype that might have ordinarily surrounded it. But an incredible thing happened when we landed. We landed out in the middle of this dinky little airstrip, almost on a dirt tarmac, out in the middle of nowhere. And you know, Mexico City at that time was, I think, 19 million people. I don't know what it is now. It's probably a lot more than that. But they had us way out in the boondocks, and when we landed, you couldn't really see any buildings or anything. And as some lights came on, you see these guys with Uzis and machine guns and so forth. And we're going, oh my gosh, what's going on here? But they were the ones that were going to, in essence, escort us into the heart of the city of Mexico City to the hotel that we'd be staying at. Now we've got press, and we've got a lot of people with us, and we pile onto, I think, four big buses. And so as we took off, the buses stayed really close to each other, and as we got into the city, we noticed a pattern. Now they had these motorcycle policemen, and I remember laughing because, at that time I think Chips was still on. And if you've ever seen the old show Chips with the Highway Patrol in Southern California, they were always, their boots were shined and tucked in, and shirts tucked in, and I mean the uniform fit, and they were just prim and proper, in every way. The bikes were the Harleys, and they were polished and clean, and these were obviously old Harley Davidson's, old Chips bikes, that when they were done with them, they shipped them down to Mexico, and they just were dirty and messed up, and they had their shirt tails hanging out and a hat on sideways, but they got their guns, and we're going, okay, this is what we're going with, that's fine. And so they hop on their bikes, and we noticed that what they were doing, we finally figured out, was their goal was that those four buses would never have to come to a stop from the time we started till the time we got to the hotel. And we're going through tight streets. It seemed like the lanes were narrower than our lanes, lots of busy traffic, lots of intersections that we've got to go through, and they don't have the ability to just change the lights, to stream through. So what would happen is these motorcycle policemen would come approaching an intersection. He would get there ahead of time from the first bus, come into the kind of the middle of the intersection, stop the traffic, come up and stop the traffic, and we would go through, and then he would fall to the back, and the next one would rotate as they come around. And so we're watching out the window and think this is pretty cool. But as we're going block after block after block, we start going, they're falling back, they're off their rhythm a little bit. The timing's not as good, and we're going pretty fast toward this one intersection, and we're going, there is no way. There's no way. So we're putting bets up. What do you think? What's the over/under that he's going to get? No way. And everybody pretty much agreed there is absolutely no way, because the light has just turned red, okay, ahead of us, and there's just no way. And all of a sudden, it seemed like just a half a block from that intersection, as we're going, slowing down to come to a stop, we see this motorcycle just come screaming as he catches up. And he's going between the cars and the bus, and you could almost hear the handlebars and other parts of the bike hitting the side of the bus and maybe the cars next to him, and he's just flying. And so we're going, what's he going to do? Because, traffic's going the other direction, and he's coming at it full speed. He doesn't even seem to be slowing down. And lo and behold, as he comes into the intersection, he lays the bike down. And the bike, cars just come to a screeching halt, probably a few hit each other, and the bike goes flying into the middle of the intersection and beyond, ahead of him, and he's sliding, into the middle of the, and he gets to about the middle of the intersection to where he comes to a stop, and he puts his hands up like that. And I'm like, oh my gosh, was that the greatest thing ever? And I've never forgotten that, because I thought, how crazy is that? I mean, this guy was willing, literally, to sacrifice his life for 4 bus loads of people that he didn't know any of them. This was just his job that he had been given to do, and he took that job so seriously that he was willing to come, and he was willing to give his life to protect all of us. It's such a great picture of the cross, isn't it? Where Christ comes and he enters in the fullness of time when everything's just right as God has planned it, and he comes, skidding onto earth in the humblest of circumstances, shirt tucks out, it's not all polished and pretty, and he comes, skidding there right to the cross. Only in his case, he died in the middle of that intersection, okay, so that none of us would have to. And even though we're the guilty ones, he died in our place. But friendship, to all of what you have written here, does involve loyalty. And it involves someone who's going to stick closer to you than anybody else through the toughest of times.